Thank you very much, Dr. Helen. And now I will try to continue building, like all of us, an universal picture so that when we go out of here tomorrow, we have many different things to think about. In 1965, when I was a medical student back in Colombia, I was studying microbiology, parasitology, and I became interested in something that was very new in those days, and was psychoimmunology. And I remember I started to study the publication from Los Angeles from Dr. George Solomon and Francis Moses on the influences of emotions and negative emotions for the development of any human disease. And I became fascinated, as many of you, with the work of Hans Lee. And my view on AIDS, as many of you know, is a consequence of my study of Hans Lee. For me, what is known as AIDS is a condition of the human adaptation. If we go back, if we really want to understand what is going with AIDS and with many other conditions, I would suggest you to go back and read the very first papers of Hans Lee. In 1936, Lee explained for us what is AIDS, what could be AIDS, and as a general adaptation syndrome. And he explained in Nature what was the general adaptation syndrome. Then, in 1946, he wrote in the Clinical Journal Endocrinology this picture, this graphic that is still is current, updated nowadays. And it's amazing to me. Because for him, he was the one who created the name stress to understand the human responses to many external toxins that he called stressors, or to many internal stressors as well. And he explained it many ways, how the stress response works out through the hypophysis, the adrenal cortex, as you remember, the cortisol. But something that amazes to me is that in those days, in 1946, he explained it, that any human being that is under a lot of stress, it has a thymus and a lymph node atrophy, and that the immune system of the animal or the human became depressed. And he was showing lymphopenia, an increase in circulatory antibodies, very similar to the picture that immunologists are trying to sell to us about AIDS. We live in a world that many of us have been mentioning today, that is polluted, full of toxins. We have been in the last few years polluting the air. We have been eating garbage, agrochemical, pesticides, insecticides, fungicides. We came to these crazy ideas due to the humaniac or megalomaniacs of industrials and human beings trying to prove that we could create better food than the one that existed forever. And we polluted the food, the crops, and we created, just in my book, in the very first book that I wrote 15 years ago, I explaining how in the last 20th century and the beginning of this 21, we have created more than 1 million chemicals that were spread all over the planet with the terrible consequences. So here, you know how we are creating a lot of electromagnetic fields all over, and not only these ones, also you have to remind how many satellites, United States and Russia and many other countries are putting to circulate around there, and we think that nothing is going on, that nothing is changing. Can you help me to change? More electromagnetic fields, and we, crazy humans, have placed it in this planet more than 400 nuclear reactors. Look where we are. And I used to live in New York for 20 years, full of reactivity. Thanks God in Brazil, where I live now, is only one nuclear reactor. In South America, we only have 2. So whenever something exploded here, we are waiting for all of you there in South America. More than 70,000 nuclear bombs have been built by the humans. And the food that we eat is completely corrupted with vaccines, hormones, antibiotics, genetic alterations. We just need to go and start to study what the World Health Organization and the FAO are planning for the food of the human beings of this century in the Codex Alimentarius. There are more than 2,000 pharmaceutical companies spreading their toxins all over the planet. And look at this. And they are in beautiful colors and in beautiful bottles, like if they were something nice and safe. That's how they sell the toxic antiretrovirals. And we didn't have enough, so we decided to create drugs, and marijuana, and cocaine, and heroin, and rush poppers, and things like that. And all these stressors, like Cellier should tell, or chemical, physical, biological, nutritional, and mental origin, are creating a lot of toxic effects on different species, not only on humans, animals, the fruits, the plants, and everything. And this is why, in the last 25 years, I have been following the immune deficiencies in different animals that are in the scientific literature. So they are showing that dolphins, some whales, seals, sea lions, Atlantic sharks, coral reefs, sea sponge, salmon, iguanas, lizards, turtles, the birds from the Great Lakes, albatrosses, vultures, mooses, polar bears, horses, minks, frogs, and many other animals are suffering of immune deficiency. The honeybee case is a very interesting one that was announced in October 2006 in the United States, and I invite all of you to go to understand the honeybee's AIDS. That was the title that the New York Times mentioned in October 2006. And the dolphins from the Yangtze River are over. Last year was the last one. We humans destroy all of them. And immune deficiency is also growing in plants. With a group of agricultural individuals, I have been doing some research in the United States and now in South America, showing that there are an increase of viral, bacterial, fungal, and parasitical diseases in many trees all over the planet. That means that the immune system, that the defenses of the plants are also suffering for the craziness that we are doing in this planet. And this is why in the year 2007, I decided to go to Brazil to work with an organization that is called Analytical Trilogy. And there, in 1992, they created in France an organization that is called Stop the Destruction of the World. All of you who want to know a little bit more about all these things, you can go to stop.org.br. So, one of the views that I have about AIDS is that for me, AIDS and seropositivity is a condition of adaptation, both of them. And this is a different angle that we can show the things about HIV and AIDS. To have, when we go out from here tomorrow, a more universal view, and doesn't mean that my view has to be the only one. I think it's just to add a different angle from where we can see the situation. Being sure that the orthodoxy doesn't see anything, because they only see one thing. It's HIV, money, condoms, and HIV and money, money, money. So they cannot see different angles. So as higher the angle that we see, more that we are far from the orthodoxy. When we humans are exposed to stressors of different things, we have an immunogenic effect with chronic activation of the immune system, and also an immunotoxic effect with chronic deterioration, and the immune system can suffer. And this can get to a collapse. And this is what Hans Selye explained since 1936. what I view of AIDS is that when we humans are exposed to different chemical, physical, biological, nutritional, or emotional conditions in a specific host with a specific emotional life, we can bring to an immunosuppression, and then if we don't stop the thing, we can come to opportunistic infections, opportunistic tumors, and opportunistic metabolic diseases. That is what has been circulating with the name AIDS since 1981. That I already explained it. No. And when we study, we can study this from different angles, multiple angles. And one angle that I insist it doesn't need to be the only one, is that some of the stress responses that happen in the human being is that it liberates a lot of stress proteins, not the classical stress proteins that you read in the books, different kind of proteins. And all these proteins are activating the immune system. And many of these antibodies to these stress proteins, perhaps, is some of the things that we are detecting in the ELISA and Western blot tests. So with this view, what I see is that the exposition to multiple chemical, physical, biological, nutritional, and emotional factors can bring the person to immune deficiency and AIDS. And in that process, the person could be HIV positive, not necessarily. So if that is the case, HIV, the seropositivity would be a consequence of the pathogenesis of whatever is AIDS and not the cause of anything. So in that view, seropositive individuals wouldn't be infected with anything. They would be just intoxicated, a little bit oxidated, perhaps a little bit weakened, perhaps a little bit, as I will explain later. And that's why seropositive people, according to my view, has higher risk to develop different conditions if they don't take the necessary precautions. However, multiple repeated and chronic exposition to stressors doesn't always get to disease, because if the things were as horrible as I'm showing today with all these chemicals and things that are all over the planet, why not everybody is getting sick? Why some people get sick and some people do not? And why some people develop AIDS, some people develop leukemia, some people develop multiple sclerosis, some people develop arthritis, different conditions. Why is that? What makes us human beings to respond in different ways? It depends fundamentally on the status of what has been known since the time of Hippocrates, of the inner pharmacy, the inner condition of the person. And the inner condition of the person works according to the emotions. And it had been known since the time of Galeno that negative emotions causes depression of the inner pharmacy, the defenses. For instance, Galeno explained very well how breast cancer develops in women who were very depressed with anger, but they don't fight. They don't complain to the husbands. They are just quiet, very quiet. So it looks like, according to Galeno, those women who fight with the husband, who fight with everybody, is a protection against breast cancer. Okay, there are many toxic emotions. And we sometimes, when we talk about emotion, it's difficult because we think that you have toxic emotions, that I am an you. And the only way to start to understand that, and that I went to Brazil, is when we start to see that all of us, in any moment, we have different of these emotions. Sometimes we have envy, arrogance, anger, avarice, laziness, gluttony, lust, megalomania, anxiety, depression, panic, lack of hope, gluge of feelings, intolerance, intransigency, paranoia, aggressivity. And when we see that, we remember some of our friends in Perth, in South Africa, or in London, with a lot of intransigence, paranoia, aggressivity, the ones who want some of us to say that we have been wrong or that HIV does not exist and things like that. This is just emotions of many of us bring or brought to these discussions that is not going to help anything. So these emotions are in every single human being. The thing is that they have in different degree, and that is what makes all of us different. And there are not two humans who are the same. This is the guy that I'm working now. Dr. Norberto Keppe has been spent 70 years studying emotional life. And he has been able to write this book, The Origin of Illnesses, that fascinated to me in 2004, where he explained that for any disease to be developed, you need to have a specific personality. You have to have some specific emotional conditions to develop that. So about 30 years ago, I started to study all these publications that are in science about the personality for cancer, the personality for arthritis, the personality for lupus, the personality for Alzheimer's, the personality for Parkinson. And it's quite interesting to see that, because even knowing the people, you know what they could develop. That's why I would suggest to those people who are very aggressive, very arrogant, very intransigent, never to do an HIV test, because there is a chance that they could be HIV positive. Since the time of Frank Alexander, at the beginning of last century, he was a disciple of Freud. He said that all diseases are psychosomatic. Then George Solomon was the one who created the name psychoimmunology here in Los Angeles. And then Robert Adler in the University of Rochester created the name psychoneuroimmunology. We humans have what we deserve. Diseases are caused by ourselves, and usually for the lack of ethics. Psychopathology is present in all human beings. It's not like Freud said, that there were some people who were equilibrated, some people who were neurotic, and some people who were psychotic. All of us, we are mentally disequilibrated. We are more, we are less, but all of us, we have different emotions that we manifest at través of our life. Human beings destroy everything, everything. It's not just Bush or Obama who are destroying many countries. No, when we threw a gun to the sun, it's the same thing. It's that we don't have enough power to throw more things. But it's the same feeling when we put garbage and things like that. Some people use HIV as an excuse. It's a mental projection. And some people, in these 25 years that I have been seeing patients with AIDS, in South America, in Africa, in Europe, in the United States, many of these things are conclusions that I take from them. I see that many of them, they get many seropositive people, especially our friends that we lost on AIDS, very close friends, that we love it, and that I know the spirit of them are here, like Christine, like Hugh Christie, and many others. Some of them could be that they got sick just because they didn't believe it in the existence of AIDS. And we need to study the incidence, even with the bad statistics that Christian showed earlier, about the bad statistics from the World Health Organization. We see how come they see that in countries like Africa, there are some places with the HIV seropositivity is 40%. However, Spain, Mexico, Brazil, and my country, Colombia, only have a seropositivity of less than 6%. When in Africa, they have seropositivities of 30, 40%, working by the same people from the World Health Organization. Even in Brazil, in the favelas of Brazil, in the slang of Brazil, the seropositivity is less than 6%. You know why? Because in Brazil, they don't care. They dance the whole year. In Colombia, it's the same. In Mexico, it's the same. And we can see that from this research that was last year about the happiest countries of the planet. And they see how Brazil, Spain, Mexico, Puerto Rico were in the top of the happiness. I know that all of this is very controversial, but I wanted to mention all the things that to give a different angle where we can check. All the things about emotional diseases is very old. And very old, and they have been showing the personality for each condition. When I work with seropositive people, I learn from many of them. I have been writing a book for 5 years now with testimonies And I read already more than 180 testimonies from seropositive people and patients with AIDS from different countries. And there are many things that we can learn from them. If we want to know what it says, we have to go back to the seropositive people and learn from them how was the childhood, how was the pregnancy of their mother, how was everything, to know many things. And for instance, we know things like this, that very often people who are seropositive, they were attracting the disease. How else a person who is gay or who is hemophiliac or whatever, ask the doctors, give me the HIV test, knowing that it's a mortal disease, as they say, and there is no cure. For what they want to know that? It's because they want to get sick, perhaps. Some people who are seropositive, they are very proud of it, and they see the disease as a path. Some people have a lot of fear of death, fear of AIDS, and some of them, many of seropositive people become fanatic of natural therapies. They become fanatic of lifestyle, fasting, and they're eternally doubting, and some of these can get them to produce internal disequilibriums. In the gay community, one of the things that I have been observing is that many of them, they think that the society is homophobic, that everything is homophobic, that we dissidents are homophobic, that Dewsbury is homophobic, and all of those who accuse us to be homophobic is because they are indeed homophobic, and they don't want to accept that the problem is inside of them, that they don't like how they are, how they behave, and they accuse the rest of the people. This is a projection. And like this, we can continue seeing different things that we are learning from these histories of seropositive people. And the conclusion that I'm coming is that the personality required for AIDS is very specific. And many of us have a close personality to be seropositive, but it's in deep, deep thing. Many of seropositive people, they have a sadness in the whole life. They are depressive, they have a sad childhood. Many of them, they are fearful of the outside. They care about germs, they care about many things that can attack them. Some of them, they have bad habits, like the drugs of abuse and all these things. And many of them, they are egocentric, narcissistic. And some of them, even that become to our lines, to the dissident lines, they think that they know everything. They know more than Dewsbury, they know more than Etienne Harvard, they know everything about the dissidents, they are safe, and those are the ones who can die, as we have been seeing in the last 20 years. Okay, there are different alternatives to diagnosis. I just wanted to mention to you that if we really want to have a universal view, we have to start studying that there are many people on the planet who are helping to have different views. I hope many of you know the work of Masaru Emoto when he is showing us how the water feels, that the water can feel, that the water can read, and all this research that Masaru Emoto is showing with his research with the crystal of water. Also, I wanted to mention, for instance, the test that the orthodoxy are not doing, that is based on Bechamp and Enderlein, to the live blood test that can help to diagnose a person who is HIV positive or a person who has any disequilibrium. Next one. And in the live blood test, we can see many alterations that could be months or years before the person becomes even seropositive or before the person starts to have many other conditions. Next, please. Also, we need to, if we really want to have an universal view, we have to go to study Konstantin Korokov, the bioresonance. Last year I went to Russia with Christine, and I went to the Institute of Bioresonance in St. Petersburg. And I was fascinated how, for more than 50 years, they have been doing and teaching this in medical schools in Russia. But when you mention this in America, in Canada, in Colombia, in Brazil, about the Kirlian camera and things like that, they think these are charlatans. These are ridiculous. We need to start studying these things because it can help us to have a better view and to understand better the condition of seropositive people and people with AIDS. Next. Okay, and to finish, I want to mention that in my book that is outside, you can have an alternative view of how to treat seropositivity and AIDS, how to handle it, how to manage the thing in a different way. David, next one, please. The main thing that we have been observing for many years is that the people who are seropositive and who are alive and well, as Christina said, are people who accept that they themselves created the problem. When they accept that they are arrogant, they are narcissistic, that they are depressive, that they are creating the problem, that's the way to get the path. When you decrete that you are going to live for many years, you can live. Those who continue doubting and with a lot of intransigency, arrogance, they can die. Also, to stop the belief that AIDS is an infectious, that is obvious. And this afternoon with Klaus, we are going to learn how, and I do the same with patients, and it's the same like many other doctors are doing in Russia, in Frankfurt, in many things. When we have a patient who has the opportunistic infections, we treat the opportunistic infections, we treat the tumors, we treat everything, but I myself also treating them or try to show them the way for the emotional life, to explain them the things for the recovery, not only the body equilibrium, the emotional equilibrium, and the energetic equilibrium. If we go back to the history of the infectious diseases and the history of medicine in the last few years, we know that Florence Nightingale, Antonio Béchamp, Claude Bernard, Gunther Enderlein, Gaston Nessens, and lately Reich Hammer, the new medicine of Hammer from Germany, they all agree that development of any disease depends on the internal conditions. The orthodoxy hates that because for them it's better to believe that the cause of the disease is outside so that they can treat that with medications, with radiotherapy, with chemotherapy. But if we really want to go back and help to the people, we have to go back to Florence Nightingale and Reich Hammer. Next one. And we have to go back to Hippocrates. I'm going to finish. Who in the time of the Greeks, he said, the patient powers of healing is crucial, and we have to stimulate it. And we have to go back to Hippocrates. I'm going to finish. Who in the time of the Greeks, he said, the patient powers of healing is crucial, and we have to stimulate it. So no matter if HIV is a virus or not, for the patient has inside of it a power to hate, to fight anything that he wants to feel. And this is the view that Hippocrates had in the Greek times. Samuel Hahnemann said that the homeopathic remedies only help to stimulate the body defenses, because something that we are seeing is that many seropositive people become fascinated with acupuncture, Bach flowers, with different kind of natural therapies. And they think, and it's the same, it's putting the hope in outside therapies. Not that the problem that he can heal from the inner side. And Albert Schweitzer, the Nobel Prize of Medicine, say the same, that inside each of us there is a doctor, and we may stimulate. And my teacher in Brazil, Dr. Norberto Keppe, says for the last 50 years, man passes his whole life waiting for the well-being to come from outside when it is already in our interior. Next one. And if you want to know a little bit more about this view, about the emotions in our life, I invite you to get the book that is outside. And remember that with these views that I'm presenting today, I offer this especially for seropositive people who are here and for people with AIDS. And I want to honor with this presentation all those seropositive people who have been teaching me for more than 25 years, and also to those seropositive people who are now, that are not physically with us, but I'm sure the spirit of them are here helping us to fight. So I want to thank Hugh Christie and Christine Majori for everything that they taught me a través de their life. Thank you very much.